So you should be able to see my screen with some slides on it. It's a green slide. And again, if you face any issues, then please just use the box on the right-hand side of your screen, which says chat or questions. Either of them should be fine to use, and I can respond back to you using that system. So yeah, this session will last for about 40 minutes. It will finish. My sort of going through all the different features will take about 30 minutes or so, and I'll pause in between for questions. I'll also have a few polls running through just to get an idea of who you are. It might be quite quick because obviously it's 3 of us right now, so but I do hope that others join in as well. And this session is being recorded, so I will be able to share the slides with you, and the recording with you. If you require, you can also forward that on to your colleagues who weren't able to make it to this session today. As you also know, there are other sessions happening next week. Great, so let's start. This is me, Shivi Chandra. I am a business analyst at Policy in Practice, and the aim of the organization is to make the welfare system simple to understand. And we do that through a few product lines. So we have the benefit and budgeting calculator. We also do a lot of data analysis on policy regulations and work with a lot of local authorities on their data sets. And also we do a lot of sort of consultancy think tank work for the government. The agenda for the next 40 minutes is I'll go through the key aspects of the calculator. We'll pause for questions, and I'll go through scenarios, budgeting, universal credit calendar feature. Again, we'll pause for questions, and then we'll just wrap up. I think I'll just first kick off with a poll. Karen, you've raised your hand. Okay. Okay, if there's a question, please feel free to write that in the questions box. I'm gonna just run through a poll just to understand who's in the room. And if you could just quickly do that, it'll just help me understand who's in the room, what roles they are, and I'll be able to then also cater the training session accordingly. Okay, if you'd just like to tell me what role, so we've got somebody who's a benefit and welfare advisor, and someone whose role is not listed in this list, which is absolutely fine. This just helps me understand. I can focus on certain features of the calculator which may be perhaps more useful to you. I can give more examples in the calculator use that would be more relevant to you. Anywho, I think I'll just close the poll now in order to just crack on with. So you can see the results on your screen now, and it's just the 3 of us, so well, 4 of us right now. Okay, so good to know who's in the room, and basically there are a few benefits of the calculator, and the aim is to explain complex changes simply. I think it's best if I just take you straight into the login screen, and we'll then show you how everything works. So this is the login screen. You would have received notifications. You would have received an email welcoming you and asking you to set your password. So you go to betteroffcalculator.co.uk and enter your email address and the password you've set in. So I'll log in now. And the first thing you see is the logged in view of the calculator. And you might want to start with just going through all these questions and entering the case and then pressing save and saving your case. Or you can also, if you want to access a previously saved case, then you can click on open, and then that gives you access to all the history of cases that you and your colleagues have saved. So this is the list, a long list of some of the cases my colleagues use for training, etc. And then you can just click on load case, and you can search for it, etc., and then load that particular case. So I've got a case loaded already for this webinar session. And as you notice, like on the top, we've got different information here: property details, income and earnings, results, and budgeting. And then on the right hand side, we have the quick summary bar. What it gives you is these two nice handy buttons to save a case or to open a case. And then we tell you the income you have currently. Let's just ignore this for now. Actually, let me just delete this scenario. Oh, sorry, just ignore this bit right now. Yeah. So what the income is under the current situation of the household. You can toggle between weekly and monthly values. If your client is working on a weekly budget or gets paid weekly, they might want to prefer to see all their income under weekly values. And then we've got information about your case, which I'll go through at the end, action plans, and a few more widgets here. So let's just go through what case we have right now. So I've got somebody who's single. They live in this particular postcode. So I've used a preloaded case just to sort of go through the calculation a little bit quickly. We've got somebody who's born in 1973. And you can select between different benefit systems. So what this does is if you select universal credit only, it'll basically reduce the number of questions we're asking. It'll only show the relevant questions under universal credit in this calculator. So the calculator is quite dynamic like that. In this scenario, we've got two dependent children who were born in 2008 and 2010. And there's also the number of other adults in your household. So we've got one non-dependent in the household. Now you'll notice in this format here that we've got this little green tooltip next to each question. If you're confused about what we're trying to ask you here, then you can just hover over it, and you'll see that this is non-dependent, someone aged 18, or under universal credit, it's someone aged 21, and it just gives you that extra bit of information about that particular question and a little bit more specifics about, okay, this non-dependents don't include partners or boarders or tenants or carers, etc. Especially if this is posted on your website somewhere, then, you know, if your client is filling this themselves, then these tooltips are quite useful for them. And then the calculator is really, really dynamic. So you'll notice that if there are no in this household there's no disability, illness, etc., then you just say no and you just go on to the next section. If you say yes, then you see a lot more questions. So let's go into property details. And also we also cover students, refugees, non-UK nationals, etc. So depending on the postcode you entered under household details, we're saying, okay, your local council is Wirral. And then under housing sectors, this person is renting from a council or housing association. You can see we've got quite a few different types of housing sectors covered here. So owner-occupier, support or care, shared ownership, temporary bed and breakfast, etc. Or if they're living with parents, or renting from a private landlord. So let's click on renting from a private landlord. And you'll notice here that we tell you immediately what the LHA allowance is, depending on the postcode you've entered, the number of bedrooms you've entered, and the number of people in the household. So in this scenario, let's just say they're renting from a council or housing association. Their rent is £110 a week. And we go into council tax. So you can select which council tax band you're under. You can just click on this link here, and it takes you to the gov.uk website where you can check the council tax band. And also we've got this here, which is, it tells you what your council tax liability is and what that is over 12 months as well as 10 months. So after filling up this information, you go into income and earnings, so the third tab at the top. In this scenario, I've mentioned that this person is working, and their payment cycle. So they're working at a wage of £8.5 per hour. So you can select between all these different payment cycles, annual, etc. And you're also asking the weekly hours worked. So right now they work 14 hours a week. And then of course we've got other questions like pension contributions. There might be private pension contributions they're doing. So this just means, I mean, it depends on how detailed you want to be in your calculations. You can leave them blank, and that wouldn't affect the calculation at all. If they are self-employed, then they can answer questions here about self-employment, and also if they might have multiple jobs when they're self-employed, so they can add another job. They can add quite a few jobs here. And then we've got contributory benefits. We also cover childcare costs. This only shows up depending on if children are in the household or not. And then we also have different types of income, savings, investments, etc. So you say yes, and you'll see that yes, we do have some savings investments. You can enter the amount of savings here, or other types of income. So this basically covers all the non-means tested income that is part of the system. So maternity allowance, sick pay, maintenance, widow's pension, etc., bereavement, or any other rental income you might be getting from your tenants and boarders can be entered here as well. So let's just leave it as no. And then we also cover tax credits. I'm not skipping, but I'm just mentioning a few sections because some of those are actually more useful when you explore the calculator yourself. But they're very easy to understand. And then we come to the results section. So the first thing that you see in the results section is your take-home income. The take-home income is £1,800 per month. You can toggle between current system and universal credit. So right now, because this household is eligible for universal credit, we're showing you the income calculated under universal credit. And here's a breakdown of all those different incomes. If you want to help them in, if you want to help them in applying for these different benefits, then you can just click on apply. It takes you straight to that gov.uk page where you can help them in their application. Going back here, you'll also notice this little information icon. Oh dear, I need to just switch these notifications off. You can see this black information icon. If you click on it, it tells you a breakdown of how the calculator is calculating this particular benefit amount. You can click on expert calculation breakdown, and some of you who are welfare advisors in the room, you might have been used to doing this through pen and paper, writing all the calculations, taking off the deductions, etc. And this is trying to emulate that. It tells you exactly how we've reached that final award value at the bottom. And then if your client is interested in taking this with them, then you can just press print breakdown, and that'll take that across, and you can just print it off and give it to them. At the same time, if you want to overwrite some of these values, maybe the CTS value that we've calculated is different to what they're receiving for any particular reason, or for tax credits. Tax credits are quite difficult calculations to make. So you can just simply click on overwrite these values, pick the value that you want to overwrite, enter whether it's weekly or monthly, and then just press update. Or you can just press restore and we go back to the old values again. And then if some of you are doing sort of housing benefit calculations, etc., or rent affordability calculations, then we've also got a handy new tool here right now, which tells you your rent is 27% of your household income. So you can use that to inform your decisions around rent affordability. Yeah, and then we've got compare current system and universal credit. So what the current system, what the situation is right now, what happens when they switch over to UC, how is their income affected, and what are the different breakdowns of that income. So as you can see, like the tool is trying to be quite engaging. It's very visually bright. And the idea is, and we've seen that with our customers reporting us and telling us that, they'll have a client sitting with them who's perhaps a little bit bored because it's a lot of regulations that we're discussing here. But then they soon see this little, oh dear, sorry, let me just close this. Minimize. Yeah. So yeah, they see this sort of visually bright, very engaging tool, and then they're completely engaged with their case right now. And then you can click on change your earnings. So for those of you who might be helping out your client with employment situation changes, if they're trying to see between two different jobs, this is a handy little slider tool that we have. So currently the situation is this. Now what happens actually if you start working a lot more hours in the week? So for 39 hours in a week, how much of a significant rise in income would you have? And you can see like this is their income on the left hand side here, and this is what it is, what it jumps to if they start working that many hours a week. And that'll get them engaged in that conversation around what if you start working more. And then after that, we've got obviously this tiny little widget that helps help them look for work. So you can straight away, you can click on search and find a job, and it'll take you to the DWP website to look for jobs. So that's that. And then I'll go into budget. Actually, before I go into budget, I'd like to mention here. So you can see as we enter information in the calculator, you'll see that this value here is calculating the total income, the household income. Now that keeps changing as you enter more and more information. So on the results page, that's the final value. And then in the budgeting section, we've actually entered quite a few costs. So what we're showing here in red is that after costs, they actually have a shortfall of £272. So the household is in debt, and that's what we're trying to show here, and to be able to highlight that to them. And then you can click on information about your case. And what this does is it's basically you're all benefit policy experts, but it basically is, especially in relation to this case, it brings up a few notifications that would be useful for you to discuss with your client. So for instance, this household is in debt, so there are a few links to debt advice. You can click on this and it tells you, you might want to tell your client they can go to Citizens Advice Center, the Money Advice Service, the National Debt Line, etc. And also there's a few things like they might be eligible for some free prescriptions, they might be eligible for some warm homes discount, etc. Or maybe if their children might be eligible for some free school meals. So all of that and the regulations here are written. It serves as a reminder for you to help you in your job to say, and you can also print this out to say, okay, we can, these are some notifications and some benefits that would be useful for you. Okay, and yeah, so then let's go into budgeting. So the budgeting is split into 3 different tabs, and okay, I'm just checking to see if there are any questions from anyone. Okay, great. Budgeting is split into 3 different tabs. The first tab is enter costs. If you click on it, basically it's split into more tabs, and this is emulating the standard financial statement. All the different categories reflect the same. If you click on home and contents, it picks up the rent and the council tax that has been entered previously. Utilities, for instance, there's gas, there's electricity, water, and there's a handy little feature called use averages. So we look at the ONS family survey data, and we have these values stored in our database. If your client is not aware of how much bills they're paying, how much they're paying in gas, then you can just say use average, and the calculator will dig out the value for this particular household. What does the ONS survey say? And it says, okay, it's about £78 per month roughly, and then you can select prepaid, direct debit, etc. And that will basically help you gauge where they're at, in also in comparison, the amounts that they're referring to, and what does the ONS survey refer to. So it might help you also gauge whether they're perhaps underestimating or overestimating their budget. Yeah, so we've got transport and travel, school costs, communication, leisure, etc., debts, any arrears, any rent arrears, any council tax arrears, all of that is covered here. And then you can also have any notes. So you click on notes and any expenditure notes can be mentioned. And then after you've entered all that information, or your client has already pre-filled this information for you, then you can click on cost summary and savings. So we recognized, we developed this page maybe a few early this year, well, not this year, last year. And we realized that obviously entering all this information under enter costs is quite tedious. There might be a bit more engaging way to see all this information. So we made a pie chart which tells you where you're spending your different items, and then any surplus or shortfall that your household will have. So this is their income right now, and these are their costs, and you can see a breakdown of all these different costs, and what are you left with after that. And then any comparison of costs with similar households. So this is again also done with the Office of National Statistics Family Resources Survey, to give an estimate of where servings can be made. And we update this every April because these figures are updated every April. So when you're having these conversations with your client to say you can perhaps make some savings in these areas, these kind of comparisons are there to help them understand what are the possible cost savings they can make. So for instance, spending £10 on alcohol per week might not seem like such a big deal, but actually if you look at that for across a year, that's £520 per year, which could be perhaps saved. And then we have another tab called Smart Budget. Now, so what Smart Budget does is it really goes into the nitty-gritties of budgeting. It helps you prepare a really personalized plan for your client for budgeting. So there are further more detailed questions about, have you applied for rent to be paid directly to your landlord? Are you transferring to UC from other benefits? Are there any sanctions? The DHPs, etc. And all of that can be entered here, all those questions if you like, if you want to give them that detailed plan, and then you can click on Show Smart Budget. And what this does is it basically is calculating all the information we've entered into the calculator. Then it shows you a breakdown of all the income that this household is receiving, any deductions that are being made at source. It takes a few seconds to calculate everything because it is actually doing a lot of different types of calculations, but all of that wait is worth it because it breaks it down very clearly. Let's have a look now. So you can see at the top, there's income, any deductions at source, priority payments, um, any debts. So debts and TV license, rent, council tax are all priority payments, any other outgoings. And yeah, and then you have the option of printing this out, downloading this as a PDF, etc. This is quite useful, and again, you can just print this and give it to your client straight away. Yeah, so that covers results and budgeting. What I'll do now is, because I've been talking for a while, so it'll be good to hear from you guys. Are there any questions? Please feel free to use the questions toolbar, or I can even, it's just a few of us, so I can even unmute everyone. Okay, for some reason I'm not able to unmute people, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to write them down in using the questions toolbar. Otherwise, I'll crack on and do the scenarios and the UC calendar feature, and then that'll be it. Okay. Okay, looks like we don't have any questions for now. That's great. Okay, so let's go into scenarios. So once you've done an assessment of a client's current situation, um, they would perhaps then you want to help them out with, maybe they're looking to take up a new property. They're currently living in a 3-bedroom house. Maybe they need to, especially this household, maybe they need to move into a 2-bedroom property, or they are looking at different jobs. So they have 2 different job offers, or options to work at 30 hours a week and 40 hours a week. How would that make a difference to their income that they're getting from the state as well as their net earnings? So for that purpose, for any of these change of circumstances, you can click on add scenarios. So let's click on add scenario, and what you'll see is there's a new tab formed here now, and it's essentially duplicating all the information from current situation into scenario 1. And we can go up and add up to 4 total scenarios. Let's just delete that because we're not going to do that in this training session. Let's just do 1 scenario, and you have the option of just giving this a title. So if you click here, you'll now see that we've got current situation, we've got scenario 1. They right now have exactly the same income because everything is just copied across from current situation. Using this pencil icon, I can just say James gets, let's say he's called James, gets new job. So let's see what they're doing with their options for a new job. And you click on that. So I've got this scenario called James gets a new job. And what we want to do now is that let's go into income and earnings. And we said that James was working 14 hours a week. What if James starts working 39 hours a week? And actually, I mean, technically, I'm not going to do that now because we're short on time, but you can then also go into budgeting because they're taking up a new job. Their transportation costs would increase, perhaps their childcare costs would increase, etc. So they would have to, then you can modify those as well to get an exact idea of what difference this new scenario is going to make in their lives in terms of household income. And what you'll notice now is that you can then explain to them in this detailed breakdown what, in this change of circumstances, what is the income they're getting from the state. And then you can do a comparison of scenarios. So you can click on this new tab, compare scenarios, and you'll see difference in income, costs, surplus, and shortfall. Oh, I made a mistake. Sorry, I've gone ahead and changed. Let me just make this back to 14. I've changed the current situation. I need to change under James gets a new job. I'm making James work for 39 hours a week. So you'll notice on the right hand side here the change in income under James gets a new job. And I'm also, when I want to explain to James what's happening with his different incomes, you can click on compare scenarios and then show him that difference. Okay, universal credit amount was this much, but you get lesser universal credit amount, but your earnings are going up by this much amount. So you're no longer in debt if you do take up this job. And you can click on information about your case again, etc., and just explain what all would happen. You can show him his surplus and shortfall, any costs. So right now the costs are the same because I haven't changed them. But you can sort of really explain what would happen if this change of circumstance would happen. And at this point, James might want to come back to you after 3 weeks time. So you can use these action plans. So you can click on add action and say, come back in 3 weeks. And then, say 3 weeks from now is whatever, 21st of March, say add, and then you can press save, and then this case gets saved. Click on show actions when you open this case again. It'll remind you the last one was come back in 3 weeks, come back in 2 weeks, etc. So you can, and then you can, this is quite handy tool. It's a feature that we added recently that you can just use it as a checklist. I've done this item, we've done this is what's happened so far. And then again, remember to press save. So let's just press save now actually. and the tools got and the cases got saved. Yeah, so actually I need to go back to my saved case. Okay, and then the last thing I want to show you is Universal Credit Calendar. Let me just check if there are any questions. Okay, no questions so far. Brilliant. The last thing is a Universal Credit Calendar. So as you see, the UC calendar only comes up if your household is eligible to claim for UC, and you can click on it, and it just has 2 or 3 additional questions. Basically, what Universal Credit Calendar does is, as you know, UC is assessed on your income in a calendar month, which is called your assessment period. Now, if you have an income that is getting paid weekly, fortnightly, or 4-weekly basis, then your UC may change in some months depending on how often you receive that income in the assessment period. Now, if you're paid weekly on a Friday, you know that some months will have 4 Fridays, some months will have 5 Fridays. So that means that your UC income would be different. So this calendar is allowing you to see how any weekly based income will affect your monthly based UC payments for the next year. So let's just do a sample, and that will help you understand what I mean. So right now, in my current situation, I said this guy is getting paid hourly. Let's say if he's getting paid weekly, and he's getting paid £120 a month, a week, perhaps. And then you go into UC calendar, and let's just give it a second. I really should have got some water with me. Okay. So you tell them when your UC assessment period starts, and then you say how often are you getting paid? You're getting paid weekly, and when was this last paid? So let's just say they were paid. I'm trying to figure out what was the last Friday. Let's say they were paid on 1st of March. Okay, when was this last paid? 1st of March, so last Friday they got paid. And then you say generate UC calendar. And what this is doing is actually in the background, it's creating 12 different scenarios. It's looking up what the next 12 months look like, how many Fridays do we have in it, how many days do we have in each month, and then it's trying to highlight how the universal credit income will be different in some months. So maybe April has more Fridays, so then you get paid £770 that month, which affects your UC amount. So your total income would be a different value. So you need to perhaps budget for these low values, and we're highlighting those months where the values are less. So in these orange triangles here. So in April, July, October, January, the amount is £1049. And then you can, as usual, you can print this off. So back to results and reports. That's UC calendar for you. Again, that'll make more sense once you're using this a lot, and you have to if you want to help your clients understand how much UC income they're going to be getting, especially if they're new transitioning to the system, then this is quite a useful tool. Yeah, so I think now I'm just left with giving you a tour of all the other software features that we have in this tool. So as you know, you can save and you can open a case. You can download the PDF report, and it will create a few pages for you that you can give to your client. You might also want to share this case with your fellow welfare advisors. You want to tell them, I'm having some issues in this case. You can click on email and then just send this to them, and that'll go off to them. And we have these few buttons on the top here. So you have My Cases. If you click on My Cases, you can save, print, email, open a case, and also look at your usage history. This is also quite useful for the managers amongst you. So if you are basically wanting to see how much this tool is being used, or as an advisor yourself, you want to see how many cases you've created in the last 1 month. This will give you an idea on any sort of metrics you want to come up with. We've actually seen 15 clients this month, or we've gone up and it's ramped up to 35 clients since we started using this tool, and this has led to these many efficiencies, etc. That's quite useful to use usage info for that. And under team management, for those of you who are managers or administrators role in this calculator, you have this option showing up, and you can click on manage users. And what it does is, I've got all these colleagues of mine who have accounts in the calculator, and you can edit, you can add new users, you can delete users, perhaps people who leave your teams, etc. Yep. And then you have also got the option to download calculator records, which is an option basically to help you look at all the cases that have been saved under your organization, and that helps you do analysis of what kinds of cases you're receiving, etc. And then you will also notice that we have this blue widget here, which is called Contact Us. Right now, I think maybe it's not lunchtime yet, but basically you can use it to chat to us at any point. And you can ask us any questions, whether it's related to any software issues you're having, something's not working, but also if you have questions on benefit policy, we'll be very happy to answer those. And then we've got this toolbar here, the settings cogwheel here, that you can use to take a survey. You can take a tour of the calculator, change your password, go to some help pages. If you want a refresher, then there's a 10-minute video tutorial here. There's a getting started guide. There's a guide to benefits in general as well. And you can also subscribe to updates. As a calculator user, we will be we send out newsletters on the latest updates in the calculator, but also if you want to sign up for those, you can do that there. Yeah, so let me just go back into my slides. So I've covered, just to remind myself, I've covered alerts, expert hovers, tooltips, etc., budgets, action plans, sliders. Brilliant. So I think now that we're done, it'll be great to get your answers to another poll, which I'm just going to launch now. How do you think the calculator will most help you do your job? Yeah, if you can, I'll just give this 20 seconds or so, and because I'm also keen to move on to questions. Anyhow, I think that's pretty good. Let's just close this because I want to close the poll. Brilliant. Thank you for responding. Those are the results. Yeah, it doesn't work very well when there are only 3 attendees, but when you've got 10 or 20 attendees, then the polls are quite useful to understand. Brilliant. So I'm gonna unmute all of you if that's possible. Otherwise, please use the questions toolbar to ask any questions. I'm aware of what the time is, so please, if there's anything I haven't covered, or anything you have questions on, let's see if I can unmute people individually. Unmute. Yeah, click on unmute attendees, but it doesn't do anything. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, please use the questions toolbar. If there are no questions, Karen, I've managed to unmute you. Do you have any questions, Karen? Anything at all?
Yeah, I just unmuted you.
Okay.
On the right hand side. Yeah, it looks like it's an excellent tool. I have to admit that it was presented really quickly, and I think my brain was scrambling to get around all the finer points and details. Is it possible to sort of look at the webinar again, or do you think that the help section on the calculator will be the go-to sort of way of finding out and refreshing, and because I think I just need a bit more confidence before I start using it properly with all the features.
Yeah, yeah, I do apologize if I did go through it quickly, but that's one of the I mean, yeah, it was also because I ended up waiting a little bit at the start. But both options are there. So there is further support at this help page, which you can also access from within the calculator. There you'll find the 10-minute video guide, which is similar to what I've done today, sort of going through the bits of the calculator. And also the webinar recording is available to you after this. And also there are 2 more webinar sessions happening next week. 12th and 13th of March. So they'll be on the same registration page that would have been sent to you. So you can register for it again, but again, you have access to the webinar recording as well.
Just practice really, isn't it? And familiarization, I think.
Yeah, I think also like you have the ability to delete a case. So, you know, you can just do some sample cases and delete them. It's not going to overcrowd the calculator in any way. So feel free to do that. I think that's probably the best way. But I do appreciate that it is a lot of information to take in. But it's also difficult for us to condense it into, yeah.
Just very quickly as well, obviously when you start, you create a new case on the top right hand side. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you create a new case, and the buttons where you're saving halfway down to the right of the page, that's just to save the information as you navigate across the tabs, isn't it? With household, property, income. So you're saving that, but you still have to save your case on the top right on My Cases once you've created you know, the current situation. And then also, so in terms of what I see basically is that I'm creating the current situation as it is for my particular customer. And then if I want to do a straightforward calculation to work out what situation that customer will be in, say for example, if they were to gain employment of, I don't know, say they're on job seekers allowance and they're going to gain 14 hours a week, then I would just go into add scenario, and it'll duplicate all the current information, and then factor in the changes. So technically what I want to have is 2 scenarios side by side, what their situation is now and what it will be if they should start work for, you know, however. And yeah, and there's lots of other functions I know that you've described which look great, but it's all practice, I think.
Yeah, so exactly. So under current situation, income and earnings, you'll say, are you in work? No. And then the calculator will automatically say that, you know, they are under JSA. And then you create your new scenario. Everything will get copied across, and you say, are you in work? Yes. And then you'll allocate them, you know, if it's like a national.
And everything else will be factored in, yeah, because it's still the same. So when you create that current scenario, you save that on the right hand green tab, yeah, for your current situation. And then you can go to create a new, so you just click into scenario 1, and as you go along you'll save that as well, but the entire case is then saved in My Cases, isn't it, under whatever you might call it.
Yeah, let's just do this now. Let's show trust case, let's just call it. And no. And then I press save, and I really recommend that you keep pressing save.
Yeah.
And then you press open in case you want to switch to a new case. Your latest, I've got 1,000 cases here, so it takes a second to load. But there you go. You can see show trust cases come up here. It's created by me. Actually, one of the things I can explain here is this plus sign here as well. So every time I'm pressing save, it's creating a copy of it. So it's creating versions of it. And if you go on holiday and your colleague takes over your case for the time being, they can just load up this case, and then when they press save, it will show that, you know, they saved this case, let's say tomorrow or something. So it will show 8th of March 1. So it's essentially creating an audit trail, like a trail of saving, essentially a case history
Yeah.
And that's useful, especially if somebody comes back to you in 3 months' time as well, to see that history there.
Okay.
But yeah, sorry?
It's practice, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to do a few runs, I think, before sitting in front of somebody quite confidently and doing it, because there's that many tabs, aren't there, to scenarios and things that you can do with it. Okay.
Absolutely. And if you have a team of people, maybe in a month's time or so, if you're still not feeling very confident about it, we're also welcome to come over and give a session. At this point, we were told that everyone's happy to have online sessions, but we could do a face-to-face training session with where we do like a sample case that everyone does for you, etc. Does with you, sorry. That's quite useful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Amy?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to everybody on the call, when we're creating cases for individuals, due to data protection, rather than putting people's names, we want to put their ENG reference numbers onto the system, just because we obviously don't want people to be identifiable on the system. So I just thought I'd mention that. And Shivi, if you could mention, I'll write that down for you, but if you could mention it in further training webinars, that would be great.
Yeah, what I can do is actually, so here under name and reference, there's I suppose in a similar way to how you can see this red text here, the enter correct format. I can have a reminder there. If you let me know what the text is, I can enter that within Short Trust for all Short Trust. So
perfect. I'll send that over to you. Thank you. But yeah, thanks for taking us through that. It looks like it's a really useful tool. So yeah, thank you.
Great, and I hope more people are able to join in. Do let me know, if you need more sessions in a month's time or so, or whenever you think it's required, because I can understand that not many people have managed to join in. So yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.